Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Ashley. We have a double request here, Next Wave and Time I Have from the band Chaincrow. Let's dive into this. I don't know if I should listen to these back to back or take a break between them. I don't know if they're connected. I'll just play it by ear, I guess. Let's dive into this first one called Next Wave. So we have this rising idea that is filled with tension. It's not rising to positivity. It's just simply rising.
Flashes of the crashes so close to calling it. The next wave of fire hits.
Very simple drum part.
Then the bottom falls out.
Mostly just snare on 2 and 4.
Blackout.
Super funky guitar part alongside that though. A lot of grit on the vocals.
This time I don't think I can take the fall.
Oh yeah.
They say some missed the boat. Feels like this one's sinking. I know I shouldn't, but I'm always overthinking. Running on empty, no wig left to burn. Chasing sleep in too deep, past the point of no return. Giving all as I hit the wall. This time I don't think I can take the fall.
Ooh. Bass laying down the low ends.
More lost than I've ever been in a total tailspin. Can't go back through the barbed wire. Sometimes the only way out is through the fire.
Ooh.
Giving all as I hit the wall. This time I don't think I can take the fall. Giving all as I hit the
Interesting little movement there.
This time I don't think I can take the fall.
Okay, so they don't go into... I'm gonna just take a moment here, talk about this real quick. Solid alternative rock stuff. What I find really interesting is the acousticness of everything. The bass, something about the bass seems interesting to me. It sounds like an acoustic bass synth patch, I think a lot of that comes down to the abrupt start and stop to the bass, as well as the consistency of attack. Maybe that's stuff that they're doing with amps and stuff like that, effects pedals, to create a very specific sound, but it's kind of missing the resonance I associate with a bass guitar. But aside from that, we have vocals that feel rather untouched. There's a nice bit of EQing to bring some brightness out on them despite the grit. But other than that, feel incredibly raw in a way that works, not one that feels it doesn't feel like it hasn't been worked on, but it feels like it didn't need worked on. Does that make sense? The guitar is an acoustic guitar throughout this, not a clean electric. It brings a very specific flair to this that I think works well, especially with the vocal timbre. And the drums are kind of minimal. You know, at the beginning I mentioned snare on 2 and 4, and that's about it. There's some cymbal work on every quarter note, every beat, to create a little bit of extra movement, but mixing, the cymbals are very quiet in this moment. It really is the bass and the guitar dominating all of this with the vocals and the snare. And it sets up a kind of minimalistic sound overall. Really approaching this idea of what do we need to build this? What kind of atmosphere do we, what kind of atmosphere are we trying to evoke? What kind of emotions are we trying to tell? And how does all this work with the vocals? And they really go for the least amount that they need in order to craft this. And even, stripping out the electric guitar for an acoustic is part of this decision. It creates something that feels stripped back, but works incredibly well. And I love the way that this comes off like an alternative rock band. It reminds me of something that Seether would have done, about a decade ago, but acoustic. And I think that works really well. Now, something else I really liked about this was the bass-led intro into the bridge. I thought this was very cool. The bass had been stuck beneath the guitar for most of this, and actually for a moment, I didn't notice there was a bass guitar at all. It really does fill in the low end of the guitar part, but the guitar also has a deep resonance to it. So it kind of got washed up into this low end element. And after a while, I was like, oh, dude, there is a bass guitar down there. And then we got to hear the bass guitar lead that bridge section, which was just so cool. Really loved that. But then moving from this into the guitar solo, I thought worked well too, because we went from a part that was a bit more technical, had more things going on in it, because up to this point, it's mostly been chords. The vocal's been doing everything as far as lead. The bass takes lead, then the guitar takes lead though. And I really like this solo because it introduced these really nice ideas. The hammer-ons, the pull-offs, and the slides almost bring a bluesy element to it, bringing in the notes and pitch movement. Rather than just hitting a note, you hit the note and you slide to another one. You hit the note, move up and come back down. It's very emotive elements. And it ends up, I think, with the general growth of pitch, because we start on a lower note and we slowly rise up, kind of come down, rise up, and we're constantly pushing towards these higher pitches throughout the entire solo. It brings a level of intensity and emotion to it that I think ended up working really well. And of course, this brought us back into the chorus, which I thought was a nice transition. But I'm not too keen in the chorus to the outro. That was kind of rough, and I don't know, it didn't really click. It sort of just happened. There's a weird 2-beat pause and then a variation on ideas, which I do like that. The outro was cool, just moving into it was kind of odd. And the outro does give us variation and recontextualization, bringing back ideas that we have heard, changing up riffs to accommodate a different rhythmic style, and bringing in these layers to create this composite sound to wrap things up based on so much of what the song was up until that point. And I don't know, it was a very cool outro that I wish ended, the final 5 seconds or so were a little odd. Getting into it was a little odd, but I think that the heart was in the right place for this, and I thought it was a very cool way to wrap things up. Let me take a moment to find some lyrics for this, and then we'll dive into that. Well, lyrically, this song is about constantly fighting more hurdles in order just to get through the day. It says, laying in the ashes, flashes of the crashes, so close to calling it. The next wave of fire hits at the bottom, then the bottom falls out, grasping at straws, slowly fading, the blackout. The chorus really drives this home, says, giving all as I hit the wall. This time I don't think I can take the fall. Talking about just constantly having one problem after another and getting worn down by all of this. The second verse talks about running on empty and having no wick left to burn, passing the point of no return. However, by the end of this track, he says that sometimes the only way out is through the fire. There is an element of trying to push on through this, but it is only right here in the bridge, and we come back to the final chorus, which once again says, I don't think I can take the fall. So still feeling really burned out, not knowing if they can press on. Which I guess that fits the general rising feeling in here. As I mentioned, the beginning of the song is just rising pitches, not necessarily towards victory, but just rising. And the guitar solo is all about upward momentum as well. I wonder if they're supposed to represent stress levels, plates being stacked higher and higher, the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. I don't know. It's it certainly works. I can support this read of it, but I'm curious if that is their intention with some of these sounds and the general pitch direction throughout this. Let's dive into the next one, Time I Have, and see where this takes us. Alright, same idea. All acoustic. I like the bass tone on this one better, so it must have been an effect they were using on the last track.
Keeps moving closer, no time in between the moment of the trigger and the bullet in my brain. Sometimes it's not enough to mute intrusive thoughts, drowned out in white noise, won't stop at any cost.
So the snare accent here is on 3, and then the and of 1 and 3, giving us a little bit of momentum through the 2-bar phrase.
I gamble with the time I have, a calculated risk. Feel the fire in my veins, pouring something.
You know, too, the grit in the vocals, I think, matches the sort of feeling of the last track. I'd be interested to see if the lyrics are similar in this one.
I know the
That general bit of negativity, being down on your luck.
I wanna feel the rush when you believe you said your last goodbye. I know this could be it. Survive my brush with death. I gamble with the time I have, a calculated risk.
Ooh. Yeah, dude, the back and forth here is nice.
Every action has a risk. Take them every
Okay.
day. The only question is,
Very moody harmonies. Really digging that.
do you play?
Bit of instability present here. Bringing in some toms. Nope.
I know this could be it. Survive my brush with death. I gamble with the time I have, a calculated risk. I know this could be it. Survive my brush with death. I gamble with the time I have, it's a calculated risk.
All right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I had to say about the last track is also present here. I really dig the grungy sound in general, but it's done in an acoustic way, which I think works really well. The timbre of all the instruments form together into something that's really, I don't know, it has a nice deep resonance to it. And I think it supports the vocals really well, especially with the grit. The vocals, once again, like I said, they kind of tell a story of someone a bit beaten down. And I don't know what the lyrics are for Time I Have, but for Next Wave, it fits perfectly. We also have a really nice guitar solo here that I also think comes across as really emotive, brings a nice human element to it. It does keep the narrative writing, the emotional storytelling at its heart, while being a bit more complex and intricate than the rest of the guitar riffs going on. And the bass sounds excellent, dude. I think it works a lot better here than the previous track. And like I said, I believe it was probably an effect of some sort that they wanted on the previous track for the bass to sound that way. I don't know. It sounds more natural here, which I think fits the natural guitar, drum, and vocal work here. The drums are, once again, very snare heavy. We do get a little bit of tom in there towards the end of the bridge. I thought it was going to bring us into a big tom section, but it was literally just 4 tom hits and then silence. The cymbals are kind of covered up by everything else once again. We do have more snare work though. As I mentioned, we have a 2-bar phrase. First bar is just accent on beat 3. Second bar is an accent on the end of 1, so halfway between beats 1 and 2. And then on 3, bringing in a little bit of syncopation and directionality, giving us this larger 2-bar phrase rather than a 1-bar phrase. All of that, I think, does a great job of pulling us through that moment. And the big highlight for me, though, was the back and forth, the conversation going on between the guitar and bass in the bridge. I thought that was beautiful. And once again, it's a cool moment that features the bass that leads into a guitar solo. I think that's both of these tracks now that I've really enjoyed the way that they've crafted the bridge, moving into it, moving into the solo, and moving out of it. All works really well. I don't have anything else to add to this one though. It's very similar to the other track in emotion and atmosphere and in blueprint. While it has its own riffs and ideas, much of it is used in the same way and built upon the same foundation that Next Wave was. Let me dive into some lyrics on this one and then we're going to wrap this video up. All right. There's a surface level read here about playing Russian roulette. Talks about gambling the time that you have and calling it a calculated risk. At one point saying every action has a risk and I take them every day. The only question is how many empty chambers do you play with? But there is the second level to this. The metaphorical one, and I'm not entirely sure what that is. The first stanza says the end keeps moving closer, no time in between the moment of the trigger and the bullet in my brain. The idea of the end coming closer, I mean, in the surface level read of the game of Russian roulette, it could just be that every time you play, there's a chance that you're not going to win. But I'm also picturing this in the grand scheme of life. That every second you're one step closer to your death. You need to make the most of your time. Also, the next stanza says, sometimes it's not enough to mute intrusive thoughts drowned out in white noise won't stop at any cost. I'm trying to figure out how this works into everything else. The chorus simply states that I gamble with the time I have. It's a calculated risk. So I mean, that's vague. It can represent just about anything. It can be applied to just about anything. The third stanza says, feel the fire in my veins, pouring something stiff, the unknown taunting me, the game we play, what if? I know the odds, I've built them up in my mind. I want to feel the rush when you believe you said your last goodbye. And at this point, I've started questioning whether there is a metaphorical layer or not. There's certainly lines that I think allude to it. But at this point, maybe there isn't. Maybe this is just a song about playing Russian roulette. And I don't know. I think I could go either way on this one. So does either of them fit with the idea of the music? And I think it does. The music has a bit of dreariness to it, and an energy that we didn't really hear the first time around. Particularly the guitar solo here isn't necessarily one of rising intensity, but is one of rising energy. We do more as we get through the solo rather than rising in pitch. It almost feels like it's accelerating in speed. And I think that can be seen as the thrill, the rush of taking these gambles and having them pay off. As he says, it's a calculated risk, one that he is hopefully calculated out to be one that he won't lose. But there's always that chance. And I think that's where a bit of the energy and danger come from in this track. But these are just my thoughts on Chaincrow's Next Wave and Time I Have. What did you think of these? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take or opinion on this, a different perspective than mine on these tracks? Let me know. Put all of that in the description box. Put all of that in the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link for Linktree. It'll take you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.